Hi, my name is William Bowen, and I was looking at the George Whitfield's America's Spiritual Founding Father, Chapter 7, and I was looking at some of it, and the quote right off the bat says, "Hearing him preach gave me a heart wound," and that was from a Calvinist preacher. Um, it was interesting to see how much of an impact that Whitfield had that you know had somebody say something as profound as that it gave me a heart wound, and seeing some of the other things that people had said about his preaching. It was interesting to see because um, Whitfield was, I mean, he was, there was a number of preachers at the time that were very important to the spiritual well-being of the country, but Whitfield seemed to have that knack of really coming directly to the point with the people, and that's what they seemed to grasp. I think a little bit easier. Um, One person, I think this was Nathan Cole. He was a farmer from Connecticut that heard Whitfield preach. Um, he said that he looked almost angelic in a young, slim, slender youth before some thousands of people with a bold, undaunted countenance. And hear me now, um, and my hearing now how God was with him everywhere as he came along. It solemnized my mind, and that statement right there about how God was with him. And, you have everybody of that time talking in that nature. That was something that was big for a country of that time period. So he really noticed that that God was with Whitfield, and Cole goes on to say that it put me into a trembling fear before my he began to preach, and that's something else that you don't really ever hear. Even nowadays, that people say that it put me in a trembling fear before he began to preach. Like just the sense of I don't want to necessarily say godliness, but that spiritual strength that Whitfield had for preaching really made a big difference with the people of that generation, and an impact that was very, I would almost go and say beyond its time. And it was interesting to see that. Um, Looking a little bit further into how he went about preaching and stuff, there were a lot of African Americans. There was a lot of Native Americans that attended his some of his revival meetings, and for that time period as well, to even consider reaching out to some of those were nationalities where it was a very big deal. So it kind of shows the amount of uh, not reckless abandon per se, but the amount of character maybe that Whitfield had, that he was going to preach the gospel to everybody that was willing to hear it in a time when it was not um, correct to do that, specifically with African Americans and Native Americans. Um, Obviously, times have changed since then, but and we see that in other areas where people were not necessarily as willing to do such a thing as Whitfield was. So it was very interesting to read how his aura was able to reach out to people of all natures.